Hi, welcome to Jason FinTips. My name is Jason Ball and I will be your host today. Today I wanted to talk about teaching your kids about money, a step-by-step guide for parents. But before we get started, quick disclaimer, the content shared during this video is provided for general education, entertainment, and information purposes only. It is not financial, investment, tax, legal, insurance, political, or medical advice. No personal recommendations are being made. Nothing presented should be interpreted as a solicitation, endorsement, or guarantee of results. Although I do hold a CFP, ChFC, CLU designations, I'm not acting as a financial advisor, fiduciary, insurance professional, tax professional, or legal representative through this platform. All examples, case studies, and scenarios are hypothetical and intended to illustrate financial principles only. Viewing or engaging with this video does not create an advisor client, fiduciary client, insurance advisor, or a planner client relationship. Always consult your own licensed professional for advice specific to your individual circumstances. For a full legal disclaimer, see jasonfintips.com/legal. And with that, let's dive into the video of teaching your kids about money. So the first thing, before you don't want to hang out here too long, first of all, there's 5 key takeaways. First, so if you just want to get the quick overview, start early, teach through activities, focus on saving and budgeting, reinforce the importance of saving, introducing basic budgeting skills, and prepare for the future, educate teens about compound interest, credits, and basics of investing, and set them up for long-term goals, model generosity and responsibility. And one thing I'd also like to add for this is think of the needs, wants, and wishes, I think is a good way to think about money. So, with that, let's dive into the overview of here. Did you know that a child's money habits are largely formed by the age of 7? I've had my kids and I started that when we were very young, so I've been through this. Please hit the like and subscribe if you're interested in to hear more content about this type of stuff. As a parent, teaching your children to grow, from tying their shoes to riding a bike to saying phrases like thank you. But financial literacy is arguably one of the most important life skills, and it's often overlooked, and I don't think it's often taught the right way for a lot of individuals on how the kids learn about money and these same money lessons that we learn from our parents. This guide is designed to help parents teach kids about money from preschool through high school using age appropriate tools, example lessons, and activities. When your child is just learning with a quarter or is preparing to open their first checking account, you'll find strategies here to help build confidence and discipline and learn long term money skills. So let's start looking at some like age appropriate money lessons that we might be looked at. So if you're just fairly new and you've got some young kids, a 3 to 5 age range, you might want to start looking at the needs and wants. And this can be like going into the store and like sorting toys from toy sorting. Keep lessons short and visible. Is this something I really need or is it something that I really want? And I know 3 is a little early, 4 is starting to get in there, and 5, it depends on the mental capacity of where your child is. Um, in the age range of about 6 to 9, we want to start looking at earnings and savings, creating a chore chart with allowance, using jars or apps, something to keep their money in, to start saying, okay, if this is something that I need or want, and is it something that I'm going to have to future? And like, I can go look and ask about different things and prices, but is it a need or a want? Is it something I really need or something I just want it? Because if I spend it on this, maybe I won't have something else. When we start getting about 10 to 12, we start seeing things more like goal setting, saying, you know what, I want to set a goal to start saving for an allowance, or I want to save for a new toy, or I want to save to go buy something, a bag of kettle corn, or a new art book. Something that kind of doing something that matches the reinforces the behavior that there's going to be some goal of what they want to get. That might be a really nice new toy, but let's see if we really want it. And if we really want it, let's save up for it. When we start getting to 13 to 15, we start doing budgeting and tracking. Start thinking like, okay, I'm going to plan a birthday party budget. Let's take a look at the budget. How am I going to split the budget up? How is the money going to go? How much do I want to spend? Do I want it to be something that's, emotionally focused, or how am I going to put this up? And this might be introducing simple spreadsheets or tools, or we might sit there and start looking at, spreadsheets or tools, things that we can start looking at to keeping track and setting goals from our needs, wants, and wishes. And when we start getting into like the 16 and 18 years old, then we're starting about credits and banking. Am I opening a checking account? Am I putting an investment account? Am I going to start saying a brokerage account to learn how to actually buy a stock? And am I going to research that and walk through how interest rates work and how interest rates work? Am I going to save? How do I compare with savings accounts, and how do I compare the interest rates? And at this point, I probably would start teaching about taxes as well. Um, Basic money concepts. So let's start taking a look about the age to 3 to kind of take a step back here. And how do we explain money to children? At this age, kind of 3 to 5, just what's the all around introduce of the basics of it. And I think an idea is to start introducing money as a tool that we use to buy things. It's a store of value and energy. It's like, how do we be careful with what we do with that value? Start by explaining the differences between coins and bills and different values. Use play money or real coins to demonstrate how they work. And I know a lot of this is getting work where people money is not used as much out in the environment, but it's kind of enforcing this. What is this money and how is it stored of value rather than just a credit that's on a credit card or in your bank account, just a number in a spreadsheet. Introduce the idea that money is earned by working, assign simple tasks like picking up toys or helping small chores to demonstrate the connections between working and earning a reward. These activities with small amounts of money teach children that work has value. And we might introduce the same thing at the savings jar at this time, which is clear, labeled saving, spend, and give. Encourage your child to divide any money they receive into these jars. And the visual nature of these jars help them make the process tangible and easy to see and understand. For example, if they save up in the save jar, they might eventually buy a small toy they've been wanting. So the save for the new um, art book was an example. Savings jar distribution. So you might have a savings jar for kind of setting this up as what you're looking is saving is for future goals, spend is for immediate use. I'm gonna say I given $10 and I'm gonna take $5 of that and I'm gonna save it away. I'm gonna put $4 in to go buy a couple of new pencils that I want to draw from art or spend it on some candy, and then 10% another dollar that was given to some sort of charity of their choice. So next, kind of looking about the age of 6 to 10, we're starting to look at like some earning, spending, and savings ages. And this is where we start tying some allowances to chores, to consider introducing allowances on a tier chores. So what we really want to do is teach responsibility and the value of earning. For example, you might pay a set amount for a task like taking out the trash or cleaning their room. Use this opportunity to discuss how to manage the money they earn, and here's an example. Chores might be something for cleaning the room and setting the table, might be a weekly allowance of like $3 to $5 in the age of 6 to 8. In the ages of 9 to 10, it could be something like taking out the trash or dishwasher with a $5 to $7 a week allowance. And introduce the idea of tracking the earnings, so they can start doing a bookkeeping to say, how do I track, what are my assets and my liabilities, to start keeping some way to account for what they have. Um, and then, but importantly, one of the first things I really want to talk about is, and even I don't think a lot of adults learned this enough, was talking about the wants versus needs, and help your child understand the difference between, do I need a video game or do I want a video game, or maybe I need some food and clothing. So, and this is where I would use some examples to make distinctions for while grocery shopping, explain like, here is a new cereal that's you want to buy, and explain, well, is that something that you really need, or is this something that we really want, where we want something that's a more healthy food, that might be a more better value opportunity, to say, am I buying this, or is it a need or a want? Do I want to try this? Yes, it might be a goal, but maybe I like something that's a little more healthy, maybe some fruits and vegetables, or some hamburgers or steak. The goal is to sit there and have the discussion about, is this a value? It's discussing the trade-offs of, yes, it might be a little tastier, it might be a treat, but it might not be as healthy of a meal. And if that's something you wanted to spend your money on, how you go about making your budgeting and your value decisions that's laid out in your budgets with what your goals are. And then we start looking at like budgeting and financial goals. Now, these could be stuff where we kind of say, okay, we're going to divide our money up into categories: our save, our spend, our give. And they're going to start having some tracking sheets to be able to keep track of those allowances. And you can even go buy some accounting paper if you're into that. It's easy to do a spreadsheet. You can do it on computer. I kind of like the idea of using a notepad and keeping track. of the basics of budgeting. And then one of the things I really want to do is set, once they kind of have their save, spend, and give, but I really want to set the financial goal setting. And the reason I think having the goal setting is probably one of the biggest things you can do is, even as adult, a lot of people, you don't have a path where you want to go. There's really kind of like a lot of financial planners can go find individuals and say, well, what do I want to do? And it's like, well, until you kind of know where you want to go, that doesn't decide what tools you use to get there. And I think that's the thing a lot of people miss is there's a lot of financial tools out there, how to get somewhere with some financial goal. It either, do I use a house? Do I want to rent? Do I want an insurance policy? What are these different things? There's so many different financial tools out there. The question is, you need to understand where you want to go. And once you understand where you want to go, then you start picking the tools to get you to where you want, to help get you to your financial goals. So this is why I think authentic goal setting, and setting down the goals of where someone wants to go, is probably the most important but most overlooked plan. So if someone's sitting there, okay, I'm doing my budget and I'm starting to keep accounting, the question is why, what, and how. And so the why is, where am I going? Where are we going with this budget? Is our goal to save $100? Is this save $200? Is this goal for a trip? Is this goal for to go to a movie, to buy a new Blu-ray? Until you have some of those goals kind of ranked and decide where you want to go, then it's kind of a, once that's kind of put in place, then you can start making the decisions to say, you know what, I kind of want to go do this and go out today or go spend the money and buy this toy. But as I take that trade-off, I'm going to be further away from my goal that I actually want. And this is really what I think you're looking for, is having the child understand, to start weighing the pros and cons of, is that my long-term goal that I wanted, and if I deviate from my goal, how's this going to affect that goal? And so then they can start making the trade-off of the goals. Do I want a new baseball bat or do I want a new baseball glove? Well, that's the question. If that was a goal, then they can start making the call and the decisions of the trade-off for themselves, and that starts saying there's pros and cons that they might decide. And that is really what you're looking for, is to establish the process of, well, maybe my authentic goal really was to have a baseball bat, but I really like this baseball, but it's going to take me away from my new baseball bat to buy a baseball glove. Maybe that says, you know what, I'm going to stay focused on my baseball bat for something that I want to get, my goal. So that's the question of what we're trying to do, is have them learn how to weigh needs, wants, and wishes. And they might say, well, you know, I have a really good baseball glove, but I really need a baseball bat. So you've got these, I might need a baseball bat, but I want another baseball glove that's a lot nicer, but I'm going to save for my goal to go for a bat, because if I want to play baseball, I need the baseball bat. So it's kind of the needs, wants, and wishes. And so find a way to put that into your individual circumstances with your child. And the goal is that you're trying to teach how to have the discussions of the trade-offs and the authentic goal setting, to then apply the budgeting and the finances. And this is all the way up to adults. Short-term goals, you could save $10 for a toy or book. For someone that's for the 6 to 9, for someone who's about 8 to 10, you could look for like a $30, save up $30 for a birthday gift for a friend. In age 13 to 15, maybe they want to save up $100 for new headphones or a new video game or a new PlayStation 5 or a new Xbox. How long are they going to set it up? What's the goal, and what are the trade-offs that they're going to take for those trade-offs? Maybe someone says, well, I don't want to go out and have a movie night with my friends because I want an Xbox. But maybe someone says, you know what, I really don't care about the Xbox. I really want to go with the friends because I want to develop the relationships, and I'm going to put that goal off. But if the question is, how are they making the decisions for that financial goal? And then some like long-term goals. Let's say something from someone who's 10 to 12 might be saving for a class trip in a few months. For someone who's age 13 to 15, maybe they want a new bike or a concert tickets. From 16 to 18, it could be something, maybe it's a laptop, a down payment on a car. They're looking to help with college expenses. And so the goal is to make these down into manageable steps, and say, okay, how long is it going to take us? So if I know that I'm getting $5, my grand total needed is 50, and I'm getting $10 a week in allowance, it's going to take me $10 a week for 5 weeks to save up $50. And so you start having this tip, or say, okay, use some math to work back and say, okay, well, let's say I want to save up $500 for a new PlayStation, and my goal is going to be, I can say 6 months. It means I need to save about $20, $21 a week. So this starts creating a tracker to say, okay, how much do I save each month, each week? And you can do this in Google Excel sheets. There's lots of finance apps. The goal is to write it down and organize the goals of what they're saving for. And that's the big thing that I really want people to think about, is setting the authentic goal setting, and then putting a plan together to get to that goal, and then measuring how you go against that goal. That's really the long-term basis you're trying to establish, especially as a younger child and the 6 to 10 years old. And then that can fall over, will carry over into their elder years when they get older, to say, okay, I can understand this, to have a core value of, or a decision making matrix on how they decide on what they're going to do with their money. And then stepping back to kind of revisit what a need for wants versus wishes. A need is something that's essential, like school shoes, lunch, medicine. If we don't have money for this, it's going to cause a problem, is a good way to think about a need. A want is something that's enjoyable but not essential. I want some ice cream, some toys, a new movie, or a new game that I can spend a lot of time with. It's not a need, but if there's something cheaper or some free alternative, well, maybe I could go get a one move video. Rather than going to a movie, we buy a less expensive video game that's going to be able to play, or buy a video game that's going to be able to be played longer. Is there a cheaper or free alternative? It's something I want, isn't something I absolutely have to have. A wish is something like a big dream, a long-term desire, a trip to Disneyland, a brand new gaming console, or it could be something where something that I wish, a brand new of the latest game before the prices drop on it a little bit. Can you turn this into a savings goal? Is it something that it's a wish or a want or a need? And so I then just start thinking about needs, wants, and wishes. So you might ask your child, like, what's a need? You need a notebook. I want this, for example. I want a really expensive, the newest, latest, greatest Apple iPad laptop. But that's a wish, but maybe you can get by with a less expensive PC that can do a lot more for less for not as much, for a much better value. But you absolutely need a laptop for school that could only cost, that you could buy one for 500. So you have like a 500, a 2500, or 4000. So that's kind of a need, wants, and wish. And you're like, well, in fact, the 500 might want it, but the want, I might be better off for something that does the need, that fits the very need of what I need, rather than the want or the wish for a laptop for school. Um, you might want a fishy print. I might wish I had a brand new, really expensive drone, but I might not need it. So give your ideas to your child like a $10 budget, and help them shop online for school supplies, and let them say, okay, here's what we want. What do we need for school? What do we want for school? What's something that we could wish we could have? Another thing is understand the cost of things, of value over price. That's a good idea, to compare the prices at the same item at different stores. Read about unit costs and labels and cost per ounces, and evaluate quantity over quality. Sometimes you might have some cheap shoes versus durable shoes, cheap clothes versus expensive clothes, a cheap car versus a durable car, or a car that's made better, that's going to have lower overall costs. So you're trying to start taking some of the looks of, what are the trade-offs for the decisions I'm making, and then what are my future costs that I'm going to have on this, because you're really trading away future dollars and how you spend it away, as well as current dollars. Make sure to look for 3 to 5 options. So you say, okay, this is something I really want. I'm going to go shop around and see if I can find a good value on it. And if it comes into, at least they've done some shopping, is it a need, wants, or wish? Reading reviews together, so you make sure to go in and check some of that out. And a lot of people like to do that, especially in the Amazon's great at some of that, for reviews of different things, and maybe some other alternatives to look at. And sometimes the most expensive item always is not the best value, and sometimes the cheapest item is always might not be the best value, and sometimes it could be. And this is just something that, there's a lot of things out there. Just be questioning and having a process in place of how to open the discussions about durability, cost per unit, your budgeting priorities. Really, what you're doing is you're trying to open the idea of discussion of how to go about applying these strategies throughout their life, is really what you're trying to build, to give them the tools to make decisions that fit them long term in their life. let your child pick their financial goals, set a budget, and then track the savings, match their savings to boost their motivation. That might be something that was a good idea. So you might think about what things you'd love to buy and how can you work together to make that happen. Let's say you want to go on a vacation too. You might figure out, let's work together as a budget to figure out how we can get here. And then about the ages of about 13 to 15 might start bringing in the ideas of compound interest, and that's things like bringing in the annual interest rates, how much is saved per year. So if you start saving $100 with 5% and I saved it every month, how much am I going to have at the end of the year? And the idea of the delayed gratification to say, you know what, if I'm not going to have this $100 now, but I put $100 in the bank and I save in the interest, I'm going to have $105 at the end of the year. Um, Start this kind of idea of, okay, do I really need this today, or to have something that I have to save? Is, can I start building my savings for my future? And especially for a lot of kids today, they're going to have a lot more, have to take a lot more control of their own retirement and their finances. So I think being more financially aware long term is going to put them in a better position for themselves. um, and about 15 to 18, I think this is something a lot of people, even adults, don't pay enough into. Pay attention to your credit. Credits and interest rates are going to cost a lot of kids that grow up into their lives, will be one of the biggest expenses. And having good credit that will make everything from buying a car to borrowing money to credit cards to if they have to go in and buy a house, to go buy a house, or having a washer and dryer breakdown and have to go in and be able to have good credit, is going to lower the overall cost of borrowing money throughout their lives. So managing their credit is probably going to be one of the biggest financial decisions. To be able to know how to manage it, understand it, can help them save a lot of money long term in their life. And that includes understanding credit cards, know how to calculate the interest rates on auto loans. That's one thing I think a lot of people don't know how much interest that actually costs, as well as homeowners insurance. So figuring out compound interest and how borrowing money works and the importance of paying it back on time. And not against, I'm a little different. I'm not against borrowing money, and I think there's a lot of strategic uses of borrowing money, especially, a lot of appliances used to do zero down payments. There's a lot of things to use cars for financing, for matching principles, that may make a lot of sense given with what they do and where people are, but it always depends on the cost of money and the interest rate. So is it a good deal at 3%? It might be a fabulous deal. It might be a great deal at 0% interest. It might be an absolutely horrible deal at 10% interest, and an absolutely insanely bad deal at 24% interest. So you need to understand how much that cost of money is costing. And so understand credit cards, the built-in fees, the charges, how they can jump up, and how a lot of people get caught in credit card traps. It ends up destroying their credit. It costs them money. It makes them cost money on everything else. So it's high risk if it's underpaid, and then why it would be used for emergency expenses, but always paid off. Some people do it that way. Large purchases on loans. I know a lot of people who say, oh, debt is bad, but actually using a loan properly to purchase a home could be one of the smartest decisions you make. If you don't pay too much for the home and you pay a decent rate for the interest, it can be a way to help fix some of your costs long term. You can also use interest rates for long-term car for purchases of auto cars. A lot of people do, but it's how much are you paying? The question comes again to is how much is that interest costing you, and how long is that liability? And that's something that a lot of people need to understand and figure out. There's lots of debt tool calculators on the internet to be able to figure that out these days, but it's something to understand how that debt can quickly spiral out of control. And at a lot of universities, they used to send credit cards out to everyone they could to get them hooked on buying using credit cards. But understanding that cost of money, it doesn't mean everything has to be paid with cash, but it means understanding. I think the one thing that people misunderstand is you can either do 100% finance or 100% cash. The question is what are the different trade-offs of the time horizon, the interest costs, and the fees and expenses of doing that, and the discount value, and also inflation in there. So if you can borrow money and it's a higher inflation because you're getting a raise of Social Security, for example, that's on a fixed income, but something can be set at a fixed cost, maybe you're better off taking and loaning it. So the goal is to understand credit, debit, their credit rating, and how interest rate works. And then understanding how debt, if it adds up and the interest rate can quickly start snowballing, and just as fast as someone says, I know the term snowball to get debt down, if debt starts snowballing with high interest rates, it can add up and quickly become something that you can't keep up with. Um, about age 16 to 18, we might want to start looking at stuff like investing. And that involves investing his money to make more money and introduce simple options such as, we're going to start looking at stock, bonds, mutual funds, explain the rest of the words. I looked at stocks to like sit there and say, okay, I'm going to take we go to Safeway, or you go to Best Buy, or you go to Build-A-Bear, or you go to Starbucks. They have a stock, they have people. You can start understanding how the difference between the stock ownership and a bond and then a mutual fund, and explain the different risks and rewards. But more importantly, start looking at the analogy of the diversification of not putting all your eggs in one basket. Spreading investments across different asset classes reduces risks. Take a look at diversified portfolios. But of course, you want to make sure to understand that, diversification, how much are you actually paying for a diversified portfolio? Just because something's diversified doesn't mean it's a great deal. It means that it's a diversified, which is something you can get, but how much are you actually paying for that, which starts going into some of the things for the pricings of what you're paying for. Just like anything else, is my goal to own something, and if so, how much am I willing to pay for it? So I want to encourage teams to think about long-term goals. I know they say such as retirement, but for a lot of kids, it's thinking about, okay, how much is college going to cost, and what is the return on investment going to cost, and how much is my student loan going to cost, and how much are the payments going to cost, and then how is my life plan to eventually buy a house, get a job, a car. The finances that are put in front of a lot of young kids these days are so hard. There, you have to be. I think that there is so many against them that they have to be very smart about how they handle their finances and their financial future, because it's going to be harder for them. It's not going to be, there are, on average, they're going to have to make smarter decisions along the way, so there's less room for failure, I think, going forward in a economy that does not growing as fast as we've seen in, let's say, the last 15 years. And so it's the importance of having a long-term plan, I think, is one of the big things that goes in there. And then teaching money management skills, even as you get later, that's managing your bank accounts. How do they know how to go in and set up a bank account, their fixed costs, what you can automate as much as you can, set up different costs that are set up different accounts that are goal setting. Once again, going back to the aesthetic goal setting and having a lot of these things to track their income and expenses, understand the mobile banking carries, make sure to explain overdraft fees, minimum balance charges, and walk through the balances of setting up, if they get their first paycheck in their job, start setting up their 401ks, look at between accounts, monitoring transactions using both bank apps, make sure they can put up direct deposits, how much can they automate, which bills they can get automated, and how can they automate to start saving for themselves in some sort of retirement or savings account. And then once we got their first job, then we start looking at taxes, and then we'll start looking at impact of taxes, start doing real world taxes. You might actually work their taxes with them, explain on their pay stub things like their social security, their Medicare, their federal and state income, and demonstrate how to file their tax returns, especially so that they have a part-time job, explaining the importance of the W form and what the withholding means. You can even use things like the IRS free file program to walk them through the basics and run together. I'm actually a big one of grabbing an old, grabbing an actual tax form and say, okay, let's grab a 1040 and run through the 1040 to see what's above the line, below the line, how do these different things work. The goal is so they have a little bit of understanding of the decisions of what they need to do, to have the basic skill sets to navigate in an adult world financially and make good financial decisions for themselves. Um, I teach about responsible consumer behavior from a savvy consumers in today's digital world. This avoids phishing, scams, attempts, regarding the fine print, contracts, and subscriptions, how to compare prices, policy reviews, understanding store policies, warranties, and return windows. They might be buying their first TV or laptop. You want them to understand the cost of the insurance, if they're what's going to happen is an under warranty in the repair, and then role play shopping decisions for buying a phone or applying for a gym membership to practice evaluating offers and spotting some big red flags. Understand credit scores. Once again, make sure they understand how to build their credit score. Credit scores is a 3-digit number, typically between 300 to 850, that reflects how someone is likely to repay the money that they borrow. And this is getting proof for credit cards, car loans, apartment leases. Helps you determine interest rates and insurance premiums. The different factors inside the credit score are your payment history is about 35%. Does this person pay on time? Credit utilization is about 30%. Keeping balances low relative to the limits that they're authorized. The length of their credit history. Maintaining long-standing accounts. Their credit mix. Do they have a variety of credit type loans, cards? And then new creditors. Are they attempting too many new credit applications recently? So beginner-friendly ways to start building credit. Secure credit cards require a deposit that are ideal for first-time users. Authorized user status. A parent can add their teen to an existing credit card to help build their positive root history. And student credit cards are designed with low limits and basic rewards to encourage responsible borrowing. Always pay bills on time. Keep your credit use try to below 30% of your total available limit. And check credit reports annually at annualcreditreport.com. Explain how a strong credit report can get them for better, lower quality interest rates, avoiding the need for cosigners, and access to better housing opportunities. Make it cheaper to buy everything from a washer and dryer to a TV to a computer to I need stuff to outfit my new house that I'm in my first apartment. It's going to have them cause lower cost to borrow money. Some age specific activities to make learning a little more engaging. Play pretend store using, play monies to practice spending challenge making, use printable coloring worksheets, illustrative saving goals. Something you might do for older kids is introduce board games like Monopoly, the game of life to simulate real world finances, create a budget or challenges. They play a small trip or family outing. And some activities for teens might be participating in a simulated stock market game, helping them with real life tasks like comparing prices during a grocery shopping or any of the major purchases. So hopefully, hopefully this kind of gives you kind of an idea. There's a lot of budgets out there that you can kind of look at for an allowance, birthday, a savings goal, toy purchases, donations, or balances. You could put together some simple budgets, kind of spreadsheets. There's probably some online. And once again, make sure to explore the value of charitable giving to people that have less, explain the value of giving back and have positive impacts, and share stories of charitable acts and their outcomes. Encourage children to donate a portion of their money to causes that they care about. And of course, volunteering your time is one of the most important things you can give. Doesn't always have to volunteering time means it doesn't have to involve money, skills, and meaningful contributions. Because financial support, create well-rounded sense of responsibility. So teaching kids about money is going to be a lifelong process. By introducing age-appropriate concepts and reinforcing them over time, parents can provide their children with a solid foundation for financial success. Remember, the lessons you teach today will shape how your child manages the money for the rest of their life. Hopefully, this kind of gives you a line of a roadmap or some ideas on what's going on. Thank you very much. And once again, hit a like and subscribe. Love to hear stuff about your thoughts. Leave some messages down on the bottom. And thank you very much.